he booked Henry Rollins on his show. And once in a while from his references, you can tell he likes like punk and hardcore. And if you talk to him about that, he'll talk to you, but if you try to ask him copywriting advice, he won't. So it's funny. I think in personal life, asking someone about their work is the best way to like show that you're interested. And in work life, veering off that can be really useful.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I think in asking about hobbies or the Phillies or Henry Rollins, and also paying attention to those very personal details that may be treated as low status bits of information about somebody, you elevate those pieces of information. Like suddenly it's, I genuinely think it's important that you like Henry Rollins. I want to know who else you like, or what do you think about the '94 Phillies, or anything like that. So yeah, so elevating what many other people might think is just sort of meaningless trivia about a person that can become really important.
Let's talk about business. We're at a business dinner, right? When sometimes the other stuff is the most important stuff, because everyone's a human. Like that's another, to your point of status. If you're in a status situation where,
which you always are,
right? So let's say you're trying to get to know Brian Clark, who when I was starting out, he was the name in content marketing.
Yeah.
If I'm interacting with him as a fellow content marketer, I have way lower status than him, way lower status. If I'm interacting with him as a fan of hardcore music, we have equal status. I might have more status because I know a lot about that, but I can raise his status in that world by giving him kudos for his knowledge, which raises my status in the other world.
Right. And I think it's interesting too that you talk about personality, the kind of person you are, open, gregarious, so on and so forth, is helpful to you in this kind of relationship building. But I think it would be a mistake to say status play or skilled status is for extroverts only. I think
I'm an extrovert, by the way.
Oh, all right. that's another conversation. I think, but
meaning I think I don't mean to interrupt you. I guess what I'm saying, I'm totally agreeing with you. I think that I'm an extrovert when talking about stuff I'm interested in talking about. I mean, I'm chatty, but there are a lot of times where I'm in a social environment. I mean, for example, that corporate environment that I mentioned to you, I was really closed off there. I mean, I did a good job, but I just didn't have the vibe of many, I didn't have common interests. It was a weird environment for me. So I think most people are extroverted. You can have like some introverted guy. I went to the comic store the other day, and the guy who owns the comic store, I just heard him talking about superheroes and stuff. And I assure you that this guy is not an extrovert when he goes to certain other environments.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So there's something about being a good status player or a skilled status player, as we would use the term in the theater world. That's about paying attention to the small stuff and valuing the small stuff. So it's not about introversion, extroversion. So it's just really paying attention and having and demonstrating genuine interest. And I think that we're back to superheroes and comics and Marvel and superpowers, and I do think that it is the people, regardless of their overall demeanor, but people who are paying attention to what goes unnoticed, to the kid's name or to the dog's name or to the team in the year. I think it's those people who tend to get things done in ways when you notice it, you look over your shoulder and think, how'd they do that? Because they weren't necessarily the most brilliant, the most wealthy, the best looking, the best placed, the best connected, but they're getting stuff done. How are they doing it? They must have some kind of superpower. I think that attention and giving status to those elements of life, personality that tend to get forgotten, I think those people tend to get things done on the level that makes you think they have superpowers.
I mean, this may sound harsh, and I think we all fall prey to this, but sometimes I think this thing that sounds like it's a superpower is just about being less self-absorbed. I mean, we talk about extroverted and introverted, but the reason the comic book guy is really extroverted in his shop is because he's interested in comic books. But if you can train yourself to become interested in other people's stories and not just think about your own story and what you're going to get out of people. Like, for example, and I talk a lot, and I've always talked a lot, but I was not outgoing as a little kid or even a teenager. But I'm really interested in people's stories, everybody.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I'm in cabs, for example, if such a thing exists anymore, when I used to be in cab,
yeah,
a lot of the cab drivers in the city and are in New York City are African, you know? And so I've talked to a lot of people in those cabs about, I mean, you'll have these cab drivers who like fought in wars when they were 12 years old and have these, or someone who's from Ethiopia who, it's one of the most ancient cultures on earth. And you just like start asking questions and it's not your experience. Fascinating. Most people just sit in the back and like, I don't know, scroll on their phone. What could a cab driver possibly have to say that's interesting? They're probably more interesting than you, you know?
Yeah, right.
In a condescending way, you know, like even Canada had, you know, something to say. No, like just get in that habit of just getting interested in people, you know?
Right. And again, not because it's kumbaya, not because it's a good thing to do or the right thing to do, because I think it is a powerful move. I mean, perhaps the greatest marker of status that you can offer somebody is, I'm really interested in you. I'm really interested in what you do, what you think. Yeah. I'm sorry, and train that muscle.
Train the muscle wherever you are. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that can happen over a long period of time, strategically and verbally, in the theater, which is some of the stuff that we bring into the corporate workplace. A lot of that interest gets conveyed non-verbally, instantaneously. I think we take Malcolm Gladwell's Blink as one example of some of that work, but then take it a lot further. And yeah, training that muscle of interest can yield just tremendous results that you wouldn't have been able to anticipate and micromanage and prefabricate before you got into it. So. And on that note, I'm going to say you, by joining us here on the Status Paradox, you have accorded us and everybody who's listening great status with your interest and presence and sharing your stories. So glad to have had this time with you.
Well, right back at you. I think you've accorded me great status. This is a fascinating conversation, and I'm glad to be out there in the world talking about these things.
Thank you for joining us on the Status Paradox. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode with Jessica Burlingame.